So I want you to imagine going to work in a space that has conference rooms, classrooms, a cafe, and of course, desks for you to work at. You're seated in an open design with lots of light and lines of sight, so you can see and interact with one another. And occasionally you get up and you make some locally roasted coffee, and you bat around an idea with experts, try to solve it. If you're in a traditional office, this all sounds very familiar to you. This is what a workspace is like. You have tons of professionals. There's someone in accounting, there's someone in design, someone's in marketing. But for small businesses, they don't have that. Coworking solves that problem. So now imagine that you're in a workplace with dozens of different professionals and dozens of different businesses. There are graphic designers, there are CPAs, there are lawyers, there are animators, videographers, and photographers. They're all there to tap into each other, into their resources, to help make their work more effective, but also to be inspired. Now, how did I learn about coworking and why am I teaching about it? Because I was in DC working as an independent professional consultant, and I needed somewhere to work. I worked out of my home, and I would go to coffee shops when I needed social interaction. We would wander around, look for a plug so I could power my laptop. And a guy at the cafe told me to check out coworking. So I found a coworking space, and that space solved my operational business needs. I could power my laptop all day. But it also solved my intangible business needs. What I didn't have, even with a power outlet at a cafe, were professionals to collaborate with. In a co-working space, I met people who were able to give me business referrals, who were able to help me work through problems, who made introductions and connections for me. I was provided a consistent flow of new ideas, new people, and new opportunities. When I returned to Erie on a 6-month contract, doing tech policy advocacy for a nonprofit here, it was only going to be 6 months, I was looking for a co-working space, and I asked around, and people said there wasn't one. In fact, they didn't even understand the idea I was asking about, and that was shocking to me. This is how people work now. This is how everybody works now. Nobody wants to pay for their office space by buying 12 cups of coffee at a Starbucks. Nobody wants to build a business at a Starbucks. Starbucks is great. You just don't want to build a business there. So I started asking people, trying to find somebody who would be interested, and I met Bill Scholes, who would eventually become my co-founder, and we met freelancers, remote workers, startups, nonprofits, who all wanted to collaborate with other teams, and we met them in just a few weeks. That sounds really fast to build the first co-working community for a city, but that's because we are part of the fastest growing demographic of the workforce. Forbes and MBO and university studies have found that there are 16 million people who are essentially independently employed. Right now, those are freelancers, they're consultants, they're temp work like adjuncts and community organizers or campaign workers. But that's projected to be 70 million in the next decade. That's huge, right? That's a big increase. Why is that? Well, because this is a big trend. We're shifting from an employee economy to an entrepreneurial economy, where most of us will create our jobs, working for ourselves as, again, consultants, working on projects, working for small businesses. And it's a work style change. 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds are largely choosing to make a job rather than take a job, selling the product of their talent rather than selling their labor hours. And they're joined by second or third career professionals who are taking the expertise and experience that they gained and liberating themselves to work for themselves. This is largely enabled, this independence, by changes in technology. Cell phones and laptops enable us to do nearly any work, nearly anywhere, for just about anybody in the world. We become very productive on our own because we put very powerful tools into our hands. And corporations love this because now they have an enormous contractor market to select from for project work. Now when a corporation needs something done, they don't have to have a large salaried staff on hand to do it. Now they can go out and they can purchase the best product from the best talent and only buy the work that they need. But this highly mobile, highly talented, largely independent workforce still needs somewhere to work, and they need people to work with. Because working in a collaborative environment, working with other people, bouncing ideas off of them, being well-resourced and well-inspired will always make you more competitive than working alone. Now, coworking has been immensely successful in cities like LA and New York and DC because those cities are flush with cash, venture capital especially. People have money, wealth is there. So you can build half a dozen co-working facilities that cost millions apiece and accommodate hundreds of members who are themselves venture capital backed and are eager to pay their way to join a community of peers like them. But my city is different. This city is a Rust Belt town hell-bent on resurgence. We are not flush with VC yet. People are not lush with money yet. And our co-working space wasn't built with $1 million or even 100,000 yet. But we had the most critical component, the community. And the community had the will to make it happen. So if you've watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk, one of the most popular, he talks about the golden circle. And he says that a business has to start not with its product, but with why. So my why is that co-working solves my personal and professional work style needs, at the same time that it addresses the issues in a community I care about. But I'm not enough. I need a group. So Radius, in order for it to succeed, a co-working space in any city, members need to join it. My other why is Andrew. Andrew's a UX designer who works for a company in Houston. He's worked for them for years, but raised his family here in Erie as a remote worker. And in Andrew's own words, 3 years ago, he had given up the ship. He had given up on ever being part of a team. He had given up on learning from peers to be more productive. And he had given up on Erie, on his city being a vibrant place to live. Because for Andrew, he couldn't connect digitally to his team. He didn't have people to learn with every day. And working alone at home, he was disconnected, even from the city in which he lived. 3 years later, Andrew's in a new position. He decided to stay in Erie. In fact, he turned down a job working for NASA's Goddard Center in DC, arguably any techie's dream job, to stay in Erie. Now, of course, there are many reasons for that, but some of those reasons have to do with the co-working space. In the co-working space, Andrew is able to learn all day from peers, other designers working in this city for other remote companies. In the co-working space, Andrew's connected through fiber internet to a team halfway across a continent. And in the co-working space, Andrew meets, talks with, works with, lives with people across the city doing incredible things. He's part of that vibrant community. He doesn't even know about it. He lives it. So, what does this look like for the rest of Radius? I'm going to tell you a couple stories of members and what they've done that's been pretty incredible and are examples of other co-working spaces around the world. This is David. David has his own software company. He's had it for 5 years, but he joined Radius for the community. One day, David got a call from a client saying, hey, I'd like you to do some web development work for me. And David explained, I don't really do that anymore. But hold on just a moment. And David turned around and talked to Zach. Zach had just started with 2 other guys, a web development company. And David said, hey, would you take this client's work, take a look at his site? Zach said, yeah, we can do that. David got back on the phone and said, tell you what, I want to introduce you to Zach. He's the co-founder of a web development company. I love these guys. They're going to be able to do this work for you. Zach, that young company, got a client. The client got the work done that he needed immediately, and David was able to make it happen in seconds, not even the week of exchanging emails. Another example, Brian. These are developers who work up in our space, by the way. Brian, he joined Radius, and he posted a request on our jobs board. He had been looking for a developer to help a nonprofit that he donated some time with. Couldn't find it for months. Within 2 days, Raul, a member of ours who works in Cleveland, connected Brian to a developer in Brazil who is able to do the work for that nonprofit in St. Louis, all organized by the co-working space in Erie. Maybe a more traditional example, Zach. Zach had started a startup. He needed somewhere to pull together his team, get out of his house, and somewhere to accommodate his first intern, Jenna. That was Radius. They were there for months, and over those months, Zach built, learned, adapted, and grew. He secured first contracts. He hired Jenna. And he did such a good job that he received investment and moved into the technology incubator just across the street. Maybe a solo example is Matt. Matt started his own copywriting company. And he thought, well, 6 months. It'll take me 6 months to build up enough clients that I can leave my full-time job. Well, Matt got some of his first clients, not by cold calling, not by marketing, but by hanging out in the cafe at Radius, where he met the owner of a web development studio that said, oh, great, a new copywriter? Could you take some of the work we can't handle? Other members introduced Matt to other people who needed that copywriting service, and he had to quit his job in 6 weeks, not 6 months, to handle the flow. Radius itself makes moves. But some of our members make more of an impact. So Jessica and Greg own media companies, and they are the only two providers of a very specific service, Google Business Tours, in this city. They're direct competitors. They joined in the same week, and we thought it might be a problem. Well, instead, after a couple weeks, they started having lunches together, sharing equipment. And after a couple months, they were bidding on a contract together for hotels across the state, making not only themselves, but also the region more competitive than they would have been on their own. Up at Radius, we've done demolition. So we took an abandoned space, and we turned it into an art gallery. In the art gallery, we show young local artists, and we sell their work at no commission, something most galleries don't do. And at one of our shows, that lasted only a week, a 20-year-old artist who hasn't even graduated from school, who works in oil and canvas, sold $4,000 worth of work, showing him, as well as his classmates, as well as his friends and his family, that you can be young, be shown, and make money in this city. This is what co-working spaces do. They bring value to cities. They cultivate vibrant communities of ambitious people. Co-working spaces are activation spaces. They revitalize buildings and property and space. This is another abandoned part of a building that we turned into a classroom, conference room, and call rooms. They revitalize communities. This is the view of the community outside the classroom that we just finished building, our community. And they bring vitality to people, the community of peers that are looking to connect and share ideas. One of the ways, by the way, that we measure success is very subtle. We measure success by the new number of bottles of wine sold at the Cloud9 wine bar attached to our building, the biggest building in the city, and we go to Cloud9 for happy hour. We also measure success, by the way, in all the pizzas that we buy from Steve-O's, one of the best pizza places in town, located right on our block, so we don't have to go very far for lunch. You see, some of our businesses have outgrown us, and they've moved into space in the building, remaining members. Some of our members have grown even bigger and moved into the technology incubator across the street. And many, of course, remain. They've stayed and grown even as our community has grown. The point is that they are all back downtown in a neighborhood, revitalizing it simply by their presence. In a co-working community, you become invested in one another. You become invested in your place. Starting a business is very hard. Revitalizing a city is even harder. But any project is harder when you're trying to accomplish it in isolation. From a strictly business perspective, we're failing. It's been a year and a half, and we're not financially viable yet. But we would never have made it this far without the contributions of members. And we're not giving up the ship. More members are coming in, more contributions are being made, and we're going to keep going until we get to where we want to be. We've learned along the way to measure success another way, since we couldn't measure it financially. We learned to measure it by how well we support other endeavors, other important endeavors in the community. Endeavors to elevate the skill set of our workforce, to create greater visibility for our region's expertise and talent, and endeavors that enable people to create their own jobs and to create jobs for others. So maybe co-working can improve your personal lifestyle, your work style, your city. And that's what I'd like you to consider. That's the idea I want you to take away. Because whether you are going to be 5 people who rent a room, or 50 people who take over the 9th floor of the biggest building in your city, whether you are a lonely freelancer or tired of your corporate office and want something new, whether you're 22 or 52, consider joining or creating a co-working space, obviously for the value that it can bring you in your work, but also for the value that you can return back to that community. Thank you.